Okay, so for the next half an hour or so, I'm going to talk to you about tips for business success. This is a presentation that I've given several times over the years to various IIMS members in all spheres of the industry. I'm always pleasantly surprised at the feedback that I get. It's been a pleasure to put this forward, but in essence, what this is a review of things that have helped me in business over the last 40 years. I don't claim to have all the right answers and know all the right things, but at the end of the day, these are things that are specific to my career that have helped me that I think can probably help you in your career as well. So first of all, here's the disclaimer. Yes, we all need a disclaimer these days. And I just want to say that following these tips and advice is not guaranteed to increase your business and profits, but failure to do so might. That's a bit tongue-in-cheek, of course. And I offer you one quote to get this going by Colin R. Davis. Colin R. Davis was a very famous conductor who said, the road to success and the road to failure are almost exactly the same. And I agree with his sentiments. So first of all, what I'd like to do is to share a secret with you. When we look at business and ways to improve our business, there are really only two things that you can do. And I do believe quite strongly, and they're obvious, but let's just look at them. You can either increase your revenue stream, which means you sell more, you increase your price, you drive your turnover up, or you decrease your costs. That's always a difficult one to do, especially if you run your own business and your cost base is relatively low, as it tends to be with marine surveying. But those are the two fundamentals as to how you can increase your profit. Of course, this does oversimplify matters, and it is a perfect storm. So if you can get your revenues going north, upwards, and you can decrease your costs at the same time, that is a perfect outcome. However, you do need a range of other skills associated to what you do if you're going to be successful. I have a rather simplistic view of marine surveying, which is naughty really, but at the end of the day, I do believe very firmly that you have to have the technical ability to get on board a boat or a vessel to assess what's going on. So you've got to have that technical knowledge. You then need the ability to write a quality report, and we have, you'll hear report writing mentioned 2 or 3 times today. So got to have those skills as well. And that doesn't dovetail easily for everybody who is technically gifted. And then thirdly, you need a range of business skills. So those are the 3 elements I think you must have. So I'm going to plow straight on into this presentation now. This is an interactive presentation insofar as have a pen and paper handy, because I will be challenging you to note down some thoughts and comments as we go through this presentation. Not on every tip, but on some. I'm going to ask you just to reflect and to think about how you do business. So my first tip is very simply to focus on your specialism even, and to be niche. Stick to what you do best. Just do it better. Do it with more focus and more passion than anyone else. I come across a lot of people who say to me, Mike, I'm a generalist. I'm always a little bit wary of generalists. I think you must understand what your specialism is, and you need to do it well. I think the biggest mistake that many small businesses make is, as I said, they try to be generalists. Don't be afraid to specialize. People worry that if you get known for being really good at just one thing, that you will lose customers. And again, I go back to my own personal life. As a keen tennis player, when I want to purchase a new racket, I don't go to a generalist sports store. I go to a sports store who can actually talk about tennis rackets, show me tennis rackets. Sometimes they even lend me a tennis racket to go and try for a week. And I develop a relationship with those people. I go to them because they are specialists. So, in my opinion, people love specialists. So therefore, the more niche you can be, the better known you will become for what you do. So my first challenge to you, tip 1, focus on your specialism and be niche. I would like you to write down what you think your specialism is. So that's write down one specialism that is pertinent to you and your business and your skill set. Tip 2, I fell into this quite by accident many years ago, over 30 years ago. Create your own business Bible. What do I mean by that? Your business Bible is a place where you can write things that are personal to you, ideas, tips, advice, in a notebook, on a tablet. Of course, that's the modern way of doing it. I used to keep a handwritten notebook, and in that handwritten notebook, which I still have to this day, I've recorded all sorts of things in there, personal things that are pertinent to me, my career, that help me when I need some inspiration or I need to go and find advice or help and tips. Keeping this type of log historically can help you to make some key decisions. And of course, sometimes you see something and read an article that so resonates with you, you then don't remember when you want to go back to it in a year, 2, 5 years' time sometimes for inspiration, where that article can be found. And that's particularly true these days with the internet. You find an article, and if you don't bookmark that page, save the URL, you can never find it again, or it's very hard to find it again. I would also suggest that you record your successes. You need to know what you are proud of in your career. We all have highs and lows in our careers. That is just a reality. Certainly when we're striving to make our way in business, many of us will have a lot of falls before we finally achieve success. So if you don't record your successes and know what they are, no one else will do it for you. So I would like you now to write down and note one key success. That's one thing in your career that you are particularly proud of. One key success. Tip 3. Don't be afraid to ask for help. This is really, really important. It's impossible for you to know the answer to everything. Back again to being specialist versus generalist. Generalists think they know everything. Of course, that's not true. A specialist will know everything about their specialism, or most things about their specialism. But you simply cannot know the answer to everything. So there are times when you absolutely have to seek help and advice from others because they will know the answers. And over the years, people have said to me, oh, well, if I have to ask for help, Mike, that's a sign of weakness. It really isn't a sign of weakness. It's a sign of strength. It's a sign of strength because you, as an individual, have admitted you can't know everything. There's a knowledge gap, and you go and ask for help. Similar vein, really. Tip 4, outsource the things that you don't do well. By that, I mean things that either bore you, don't excite you, perhaps they are things that you don't understand. You need to create a network around you of people who can help you. It's simple, really. Don't dabble in things that you don't understand. It's a waste of your time. For example, the Institute outsources human resources, IT, legal, recruitment, proofreading, digital. Those are all examples of activities that we engage specialists to do for us. And they don't need to be expensive. You can go on a pay-as-you-use type basis with many of these people. You don't have to sign a 5-year contract with them or anything like that. What this does is by moving things out of your day-to-day routine that you don't understand, it frees up the time to enable you to do the things that you are really good at. So my challenge to you now is to just write down one activity that you might consider outsourcing in the future. So note down one activity that you might look to outsource. Tip 5, follow your own path. What do I mean by that? Your business is all about you, particularly in the marine surveying world. It's really you. You are the front of your business. You are the poster boy or poster girl of your business. It's about your style. It's about how you present yourself. And it's the image that you create out there in the marketplace. So I challenge you, stay true to yourself and stay true to your principles, whatever your principles are. It doesn't really matter what they are, but stay true to them. And you know what? Don't worry too much about what other people are doing. You can't control that. You can't influence what other people around you are doing, competitors, other people in the marketplace. Remain focused on you, what you do, how you do it, and how you promote yourself in the wider business world. Tip 6. I want you to think always about aiming high and to be persistent. You must believe in yourself and your strengths. I meet many people in business who are always undersell themselves. We all have the capability to aim high. We must aim high. Be consistent. And you know what? Don't take no for an answer. Be prepared to be a bit belligerent sometimes. Not arrogant. It's not about being arrogant. But don't be prepared to walk away sometimes and don't take no for an answer. Tip 7. For me, one of the most important ones. It's about thinking time on how to improve. None of us make, in my opinion, enough thinking time. And when we do make some thinking time, I actually go away to a place where I can be quiet and private. For me, that's often by water. I might go and sit by a lake on a nice summer's day, and that's my thinking time. Other people find they might have an hour, 2-hour drive. That becomes their thinking time. But set aside time. Don't become a busy fool, because if you do become a busy fool, you lose sight of what is going on around you. And you also lose sight of what's really important and what really matters. So as I've said, find a quiet place. Might be the garden shed at the end of the garden, it doesn't matter. Go to that private place and ask yourself a very simple question. How is my business better this year than it was last year? And what have I learned in that time? We never stop learning. It doesn't matter how young or how old we are. We should be constantly learning, particularly at a time when technology is evolving at such a fast rate. We're always looking to improve. So how is your business better than it was last year? Can I challenge you now to note down one reason why you believe your business is better this year than last year? Is there one thing that you can think of over the last 12 months that you have done to enhance your business and its performance? Tip 8. Here's a difficult one, but an important one. I already said don't take no for an answer, but sometimes you do need to learn to say no. There are times when that's actually important. And learning to say no and knowing when to say no is actually a key business skill. Let me explain why. You don't want to let people who really are unimportant to you drain your time. We all fall into that trap. It's very, very easy to do. So sometimes you're better off referring, I'm going to call them a potentially difficult customer, onto a competitor. That might sound complete nonsense, of course, but it isn't. When somebody rings you up and you can tell straight from the off that they are going to be a difficult customer because of the questions they are asking you, you could make a decision at that point to actually move that customer on. You could say something like, thank you for the opportunity. We are so heavily committed at this time, we really can't give your project the time and attention it needs. However, we can recommend. So what you are doing is sending your bad customer, or your potentially bad customer, to one of your rivals or competitors. That might sound daft, but it's a tactic that has worked in business. There are a number of case studies. I know of one, I forget what the company made. They were based in North Scotland, and they were selling their goods, much of it down into companies in the southeast of England, which is very expensive for them to handle in terms of transportation, distribution. And they discovered that most of their bad customers, people who didn't pay them or paid them on very, very late terms, were also in the south of England. So they worked out that they were having to pay a lot of money to service customers who were far away and who didn't pay them. So they brought a consultant in, and the consultant said, I'm going to halve your customer base. They knocked out all of these bad customers, who obviously they'd assumed for years they'd been supplying them work with good customers. They knocked them all out. And with that, their profit rose very, very sharply, a much tighter meter business. So learn to say no. Thinking about your clients as well, choose your clients carefully. I think many, many people forget that it's you who picks your clients. Your clients actually think they picked you because they found you on a Google search somewhere, or they came highly recommended from somebody else, personal recommendation. But in actual fact, it's you who chooses whether or not you work with them. So they don't pick you, you pick them. And I do believe you should pick clients who value you and who will allow you to do your best work. And that's about developing a good rapport. So take your time to build your client base deliberately and build it with purpose. And of course, we all know we can build very, very long-term relationships with people if we look after those customers and treat them as human beings, and so on and so on. So you choose your clients, they do not choose you. Tip 10, be a people person. This is a challenge for some people who are perhaps not so extrovert, shall I say, and slightly more introverted. It's hard sometimes to be a people person. Some people find networking quite a challenge, but those who network and network well always seem to get results at the end of the day. So you should follow all leads and participate in conversations wherever you might find them. You should be contributing these days to online forums. There's lots of ways that you can put your name and your face out there. People these days seem to be afraid of the phone. Use the phone. Picking up the phone and having a dialogue with somebody is something that we don't actually do so much of anymore. We fire off emails. And how often do emails somehow lose the meaning? So yes, we're embracing the modern technology, and we should. But don't be afraid of things like the telephone and face-to-face meetings. You can talk to somebody face-to-face. You can flesh out exactly the issues. Much harder to do when you hide behind the email. Tip 11, I want you to think about how you add a personal touch. So essentially, in the marine surveying business, like most service industries, in fact, marine surveying is not unique. Everyone is essentially selling something similar. Remember that, it's important. You're in a marketplace where everybody is essentially selling a similar service. However, you've got to do it better. To be really successful, you have to go one step further. Of course, establishing good client relationships goes without saying. You need to make people feel special, but in a professional way. And I think it's really important to maintain that professional balance when you are developing a relationship with clients. Don't overstep the boundary. Don't become too familiar. Observe what I would call common rules. But one of the things that will help you to add that personal touch is by making sure that you are memorable and that you are remembered. Now that's an interesting statement. I know of one surveyor who takes a bag of donuts into a broker's office every time he goes. Maybe that's what makes him memorable. The staff see him coming in and think, oh, it's the donut man coming. Doesn't really matter. It's something that you do to make yourself memorable. Now, I know what makes me memorable. I'm going to challenge you. I would like you to note one thing that makes you memorable as far as your clients and customers are concerned. So can you note down one thing that makes you memorable. Tip 12. I want you to think about researching your repeat customers. Everybody has repeat customers. Understanding why those people come back to you is really important. You should ask them for feedback and testimonials. You'll be very, very surprised how often someone you've done a good job for is very, very happy to give you a testimonial. That testimonial and feedback can then go onto your website, and it's a positive signpost for people who come after to the website. Look at what your previous customers have said about you. Very valuable advertising. So find out and understand why they come back. What is it you do that draws those people back in time and time again? And you should ask those people what you can do still further better to serve their needs. Is there something else that you can add into your mix that would give them an even more positive experience about you and your business? And of course, if you then see a trend emerging, having spoken to 10 people, note these things down. And then, of course, you can act on it, and you can add whatever that additional service is or additional customer benefit into the mix. Tip 13, this is really important. Manage your customer expectations. These days, and especially in marine surveying, your reputation is absolutely everything. You live and die by your reputation, not just in the marine surveying sector. It's true in any market industry that people operate in. You have to look for ways to exceed your customers' expectations. That is really important. So when you start to go out and you agree a contract with somebody to go and provide a marine surveying service, you may say to that person, you'll have your report back in 4 days. If you can get that report back in 3 days, you have met their expectations. That brings a big tick. If, however, you say 4 days and it takes you 6 days to turn the report around and you haven't told the client, you've not managed their expectations. That's a very simple example, but you have to go that extra mile. And ultimately, people will remember you for that. They'll remember you as being a reliable person. You say you're going to do something, you always do it in time. If you don't and you can't meet their expectation, fire off an email, explain to them why you are being delayed. Tip 14, well, social media, love it or hate it. We do a lot of it now at IIMS. I can't pretend that I love social media, but I absolutely do understand the power of social media. So your brand, which is ultimately you and the services you provide, is everything, yeah? Well, whatever you can do to promote your brand and consumer awareness of your product and service is critical. But you have to be consistent with social media. I think that many small business owners really don't understand social media or how to engage with it. And it is about how you engage with social media when you choose to jump in, when you choose to stay silent. So as we used to do at IIMS many years ago, we'd get to Friday and think, oh, we must send a couple of tweets out because it's Friday. Or let's put a few Facebook posts up because it's Friday. Simply is not enough to propel your business to greatness. These days, of course, social media works 24/7 round the clock. 7 days a week. Social media doesn't stop at the weekends. The emphasis might change, but it doesn't stop. So you need to get comfortable with social media. And even though you think no one's listening to you, what you're saying on social media, if you post to forums, I promise you people read it. They just might not choose at that point to interact with you, but they are absolutely listening and reading what you're saying. Tip 15, scattergun or target. So we've already touched on social media, but I want you to remember this really important point. Reaching thousands of potential customers is important, but reaching thousands of the potential right customers is even more important. IIMS these days doesn't advertise in magazines anymore or papers. Those days have gone. All of our promotion is targeted below the line digital activity. And that might sound like a fancy phrase if you're not familiar with that. I'm talking about things like Google AdWords, LinkedIn advertising, Facebook advertising. All of these things can be done. And again, if you don't have the skills and knowledge, there are plenty of people who you can outsource this to. And for a relatively small budget, which could be £5 a day, £10 a day, whatever you choose to spend, you can be beavering away and you can be targeting people who are potentially new customers for you. So don't worry about reaching millions and millions of people who are probably never going to use your service. Pardon me. You need to try and target those people who absolutely are going to be looking for your service in the future. Tip 16. I want you to understand that your time is finite. And it really is. If you think about it, there are 24 hours in the day. Some of that time we have to be sleeping, because without sleep, we can't exist. There's nothing worse than sleep deprivation. So you only have so many hours available to you in the day. And I want you to get serious about and understand the value of your time. And as somebody once said, no one ever lay on their deathbed regretting that they hadn't spent more time watching the television. And when you think about it, of course, that's quite true. Throughout each and every working day, you do need to ask yourself this simple question: is this the best use of my time right now? If the answer is no, then I suggest you need to reorganize your priorities and go and do something more productive. We all have drains on our time. There are things in our life that we absolutely have to do, of course, but there are times when we need to be focused on doing those deals, writing our reports, developing our business. And if something is taking you away from being able to do that, which really is not important, then understand that, push that aside, and stick to the things that are important. So understand that your time is finite. Do not put off. Tip 17. Many of us often make the decision, subconsciously sometimes, to do the tricky stuff or not do the tricky stuff. We park it. We do the things that we're comfortable doing. You do have to force yourself to do the tricky stuff. Those are things that are perhaps controversial, things that we don't like doing. You have to deal with them. Every business owner says that they give their business 100%. And they probably genuinely mean that. But in my opinion, what they actually mean is that they give 100% to the stuff that they are comfortable with. They don't give 100% to the things that are challenging and difficult. So you have to decide to get less comfortable with the limitations of your comfort zone. You need to know where the parameters of your comfort zone are, and you need to understand what the tricky decisions are that you're putting off. And again, I come back to outsourcing. If there are things that you cannot struggle to make decisions on, then I would encourage you to actually look outside the box. Sorry, guys, I'm just muting some of you who've joined the conversation for the benefit of everybody. Okay, let me keep going. For those of you, by the way, who've joined halfway through this presentation, of course, you'll get a copy of this when we make them all available after the fest. So I have two more tips to give you. Tip 18. before I leave tip 17. So do not put off. For those who've just arrived, I'd like you to write down one thing that you have been putting off or avoiding. Maybe it's making your tax return or doing your VAT return, but note down one thing that you have been avoiding. Now, tip 18 is an interesting one. I want you to understand that failure is not a bad thing. In fact, rather the opposite. Because when we fail, we become stronger and wiser from what we learn. So therefore, failing is not always a bad thing, as long as it's not catastrophic, of course. So my question to you, or my invitation to you, is to fail more often in this year than you did last year. And I know that sounds nuts, doesn't it? But it's true. You do need to go through some failures to make yourself stronger. So why? Because if we're not failing often enough, we are sticking to things that we already know. We're not pushing ourselves as individuals. And that's fine. It's not compulsory to do that. But if you are geared the way perhaps that I'm geared, I'm always wanting to try new things. And when you try new things, sometimes you do fail. So if you're not doing this, it means as an individual, you are no longer growing. And I do believe that your business then will stagnate. Steve Jobs, you might know of Apple fame, sadly no longer with us. Quite a remarkable man. And he would very often reprimand members of his senior management team if they were not failing regularly enough. And he would challenge them to fail more regularly. And that is how Apple became such a powerful, and still is, such a powerful organization, because they were prepared to try things and fail. And through failure, they found a route to other greatness, if you like, and the way to develop new products without barriers and without boundaries. So here's my challenge. Are you brave enough to note down one failure in the past year? I can think of 2 or 3 in my own situation here. But tip 18 then, failure is not a bad thing. Can I challenge you to note down one failure in the past year? All of which brings me to my final tip in this presentation. And it's this one: be decisive. I love the word procrastination. It's a delightful word. And procrastination is your enemy. And in many ways is your worst nightmare. You have to get comfortable with making key decisions. I've touched on this already a couple of tips ago. There are tricky things that we need to deal with and we put them off. You just have to get comfortable with making key decisions. Think things through, of course. You must do that before you make your decision on something that's really important. Challenge yourself, look at the pros, look at the cons, but ultimately don't dither and do make a decision. And in some cases, it is better to make a bad or even a wrong decision than to make no decision at all. If you look in the political environment, very topical at the moment, bad decisions are regularly made and then people do U-turns. So there's nothing wrong with doing a U-turn. If you do make a decision and you've made that decision in haste and you've got it wrong, then don't worry about going back and changing it. But it really is important to make a bad decision than to make no decision at all. So just now, to finish off this presentation, a couple of people you might know. This guy, Gordon Ramsay, he's not my favorite person by any means. He certainly divides opinion, chef and restaurateur. But he made this comment that I think is absolutely true. Gordon Ramsay said, the minute you start compromising standards for the sake of massaging someone's ego, that's it, game over. And I think that is absolutely really valuable. And Arianna Huffington, the founder of Huffington Post, she said, we think mistakenly that success is the amount of time we put in at work instead of the quality of time that we put in at work. And remember what I said earlier? Your time is finite. So you must think about the quality of time that you put in those hours that are available to you during the day. So that's all I want to say. We're 40 minutes into the fest. The next presentation will start in approximately 20 minutes, which is Nick Parkin, who'll be joining us, I think, from either New Zealand or Australia. I'm not quite sure where he is today. He's going to talk about using computers in marine surveying. I don't know if anybody wants to pick anything up on what I've said. If you would like to do so, I'm happy to take any questions. And if you would like to do that, you simply unmute your microphone and come and join the conversation.